This podcast is a part of the Podmania Podcasting Network. Check out podmania.co.uk to check out more of our great podcasts, features, reviews, match ratings and previews spanning the crazy and diverse world of professional wrestling. Guys, and welcome to the Stardom Cast, your weekly audio source of all things World Wondering Stardom right here on the Podmania Podcasting Network. I'm your host, Rob Goodwin, and I am joined, as ever, by Mr. Positivity himself, Matt Turner. Matt, how are you this fine day?
Rob, I'm fantastic. How are we doing today, sir?
Not too bad, not too bad. The sun's shining. Stardom have just put an absolutely cracking pay-per-view in the can, so yeah, nothing to be negative about. What about you?
No, it's an exciting day here in the Turner household as we record this on Saturday. In about 14 hours, my lovely wife has a tryout for the game show The Price is Right. So that should be entertaining as well. Yeah, she's big on game shows, and it's kind of funny because she's like actually really good. I want to spin this off into Game Show Network podcast here, but she's really good at like Wheel of Fortune, and she'll be like, "Why are you? There's no vowels left. Why are you saying oh Pat, your tie looks stupid. Vanna White, what are you doing in those heels?" So it's like I always tell them like you'd be great on these game shows because when you watch game shows, all these people are kind of cookie cutter. I said you would be like the Stone Cold Steve Austin of like the game shows. Like you have to turn in to watch this girl because but I think that's it's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. And not only that, but that means later on tonight I get the entire house to myself, which means I'm going to be trying to knock off a whole bunch of the Momo Watanabe white belt championship review that we're doing later on this month for the Patreon, or next month as we're still in February.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got so much to cover in terms of the Patreon next month, but it's fine. We love doing it. We'll talk a little bit about the Patreon and things like that at the end of the episode, just because I'm absolutely buzzing to talk about this pay-per-view that happened on Wednesday. As you've probably realised, we've done 2 episodes this week, just because we love you all that much. So if you haven't already listened, the basically run up to this pay-per-view from Korakuen and take TKP Garden City in Chiba, that is already in your podcast feeds as you're listening now. This show is going to drop for patrons on Saturday at 11 p.m. and then on Sunday 11 p.m. the usual time it'll drop on the free feed as well. Just before we dive headlong into this pay-per-view, I just want to say I know there's been and it's something that I'd noticed before, but someone actually brought to my attention that there is a bit of lag in the internet connection between me and Matt. We are desperately trying to get this sorted. I think it's on my end, to be perfectly honest, but because I basically live in an internet black hole, the internet does drop out every now and then. We've got the quickest internet speed we can possibly get in our house, but yeah, we'll try different things. I'll have to try and cut out the gaps on the podcast, but yeah, thank you for bearing with us. There's unfortunately not a lot else I can do about it, but we'll certainly try and endeavour to fix that. But Matt, obviously we've got a pay-per-view to talk about, Cinderella Journey 2022 in Nagaoka. Before we delve into any sort of context or talk about the show, what did you think overall?
I know we're only 2 months into this year, but from top to bottom, this was my favorite wrestling show I've seen all year. I like this better than the 2 nights of Wrestle Kingdom. I like this better than the Royal Rumble. I like this better than any show, like I said, from top to bottom that I've seen. There wasn't anything that I was like, well, maybe I'll close my eyes, I'll take a nap, or I'll play on my phone, or I'll go get a drink, or anything like that. I was literally glued to my iPad watching this show. But yeah, this was top to bottom my favorite wrestling show of the year.
It's hard to disagree with you. On a consistency basis, there was no bad match on this show. Even the future, and I don't want to say that in a derogatory way, but even the future match with Momo Kogo she's only had a handful of matches. I thought she looked fantastic on this show. And, even the throwaway tag matches were really good and were, building on stories ready for World Climax. We had title changes because both me and you didn't think that we'd have a single title change on this show, and this is why I'm terrible at pick'ems. But we did. We had a match that, again, got the entire Twitterverse talking about Stardom. We had Dave Meltzer talking about it, Will Ospreay, Kenny Omega. So, again, Stardom, everyone is talking about Stardom at the moment, and it really does feel like an enormous promotion. And when you consider it, this show probably surpassed expectations. There was no red belt match on this card. You'd got Julius, Yuri, Mayu, Tam, Utami, all buried somewhat on the undercard. But the people in the semi-main and the main event, Saya Kamitani, Natsupoi, Starlight Kid, Azumi, who are offensively young. Let's just put it that way. Between 19 and 20. I think Saya Kamitani is the oldest one. I could be wrong because I'm not entirely sure of Natsupoi's age. But they're all really young and stepped up to the plate and knocked it out of the park. I honestly really, really, really enjoyed this show, and hopefully that comes across in the stuff that we say about it. But let's dive headlong into the show. Cinderella Journey 2022 in Nagaoka, the Aore Nagaoka in Niigata, in front of 706 people. A little bit of a disclaimer, I will continue to butcher that name throughout the podcast, so just get used to that. Just a little bit of context surrounding the venue and also the attendance number of 706. This is the first time that Stardom have ever run the venue. They're also the first company of this year to run it. And they're also only the second Joshi promotion to run the venue since it opened in 2012, the first being Sendai Girls back in 2019, ironically, with Suri as part of their main event. In terms of numbers drawn, there's a huge disparity basically between New Japan and everybody else. So this venue, the highest reported attendance ever at this venue is 4,074, which was at the New Japan Cup final in 2017 where Shibata won. However, you look at other numbers. So if you look at 2018, for example, which is pre-COVID, New Japan ran the venue twice, drew 3,996 and 3,106. The other three promotions to run it in 2018 were Noah, who drew 228 to their Navigation with Breeze show, the All Japan Champion Carnival 2018, which drew 481, and Dragon Gate's Gate of Evolution in Night 5, which drew 423. In terms of COVID numbers, last year, Noah drew 246, and Dragon Gate drew 206. So, these Noah, Dragon Gate, and All Japan shows weren't big shows. The Dragon Gate show that they did there in 2021 was part of their King of Gate tour, which is their 4-block round-robin tournament, and there was no title matches on the Noah show. So you take that with a little bit of a pinch of salt, but 706 people, it's an okay attendance. I don't think it's blow away, but, the numbers are so varied, wildly varied, that I suppose it's difficult to really sort of ascertain what a good number would be, Matt.
Yeah, I think, from doing a little bit of research, obviously I don't do as much research as you do, sir, and kudos to you, but I don't think it's a big wrestling town. If you have Noah drawing only a couple hundred people and Dragon Gate only drawing a couple hundred people, it's just not a really good town. And I think from what I understand is they kind of have a deal on the building, where maybe the reason why they ran this building, because that's a question. It's like, why are you running this building and putting a loaded card in a pay-per-view? From what I understand is they probably get the building for next to nothing, because I think they have a working agreement with whatever sports complex runs the building. So it keeps your cost down. So, I mean, that's, it's one thing to make money. It's another thing to get your costs down. So this, I'm assuming between what they sold in tickets and pay-per-view and merchandise as well, they probably made a good chunk of change, especially for a Wednesday show. But I mean, kudos to, when I first read the number 700, I figured, man, this show was so good. This should have been well over 1,000. But in regards to kind of where they were and what every other company that's not New Japan is running and drawing, this is a good number. This is a solid number. And the crowd was, again, we're still in the COVID era, so this is like a pro clap crowd, as you like to say. So the crowd was into this. They were into, all 7 of these matches. So, and it was a good looking venue. I thought, just watching, I thought, the venue looked really good. It looked like it was well lit, and obviously the stage and everything. So solid overall show, and a good house for Stardom.
I think that's really important what you've just mentioned. It was a Wednesday show. I think at a weekend they could have potentially drawn more, but you've got people who are working on the Wednesday and then of course are working the Thursday morning as well. So I think, again, you take those numbers with a pinch of salt. The last thing I just want to, of course, mention in regard to the pay-per-view, Stardom ran a poll because they wanted basically the audience to vote on what should be the main event of the show, and the poll results were as follows. So they had the 4 title matches as options. The Future of Stardom Championship match finished last with 5.4%. The High Speed Championship match finished second with 34.5%. Tag match finished third with 15.3%, and the runaway victor was the Wonder of Stardom Championship match with 44.8%. So the order of the vote would basically show the order of which it would run on the card. So because the Wonder of Stardom Championship won, that would main event. High Speed Championship came second, that would semi-main, then Goddesses of Stardom Championship, and then ultimately we open the main card with the Future of Stardom Championship. However, before we get into that, we actually had a pre-show match, which I'll be perfectly honest, I haven't watched because I couldn't find it. It's not on World yet as we record, and I bought the pay-per-view, but for some strange reason, I've only got the main card and not the pre-show match, so I apologise for that. So I just want to quickly run over the answers because the results, because it does have World Climax connotations. So it was a Future of Stardom #1 contendership 3-way. And in the same way the Mayu, Julia, and Tam match should have been basically the first person to get the pinfall has the shot on the first night. The second person to get the pinfall will have the shot on the second night. That was how this worked. So Rina won the first fall with the Gory Bomb over Waka Tsukiyama. So she will be fighting for the Future of Stardom belt at World Climax on the 26th of March. Mei Sakurai, who I think we both thought was going to win that, Mei Sakurai won the second fall with the Falcon Arrow, again, over Waka Tsukiyama, and she'll fight for the Future of Stardom belt on the second night, the 27th of March, at World Climax. Obviously, we can't talk too much about this match, Matt, because we haven't seen it, but I just wanted to talk about Waka Tsukiyama. I've seen quite a few people saying, I can't believe that Waka took the pinfall both times. I think it's great. It's building her so much as that baby face. She's possibly, top 3 most endearing baby faces on the roster. You're building her so well that when she gets this eventual, we talked about it last episode, that eventual singles victory over Mei Sakurai, potentially for the Future of Stardom Championship, which, spoilers, I think Mei will take on the second night. When Waka eventually takes it, it's going to be such a cathartic thing to happen, isn't it?
I'm such a old school and long-term wrestling fan that it reminds me of 94, 95 Mikey Whipwreck in ECW. And I don't know if you ever seen ECW or know of Mikey Whipwreck, but basically he was, Paul Heyman, the genius that he is, basically had Mikey not even land like a punch. He would just constantly get beat up. He'd constantly get beat up. And Cactus Jack was embroiled in a feud with the Public Enemy, and he had a last second to pick a partner, and he picked Mikey Whipwreck. And Mikey's literally, for his first win, he rolled up the Public Enemy and they won the tag belts. And when he did, the place absolutely exploded. And I think that's kind of something similar that they're going for here, is that she just keeps eating falls, and she's having good matches. I mean, she comes so close catching people when she does those 3 or 4 inside cradles, one after another, that I'm literally sitting on the edge of my chair just waiting for it to happen. And I think this whole thing with Mei Sakurai, is just, kind of just firing her up. So I think what might happen is I think that May is going to win the future the Stardom title on that second day World Climax. But I think one of her first challengers is going to be May. And I think not May, Waka. And I think Waka's first win, very similar to what they did with Mikey Whipwreck in the mid-90s. I think her first win is going to be for the future Stardom title. So it's going to be almost like you're kind of killing three birds with one stone. Is one, you have Waka's first win. Two, it's over May after she turned on her. And it's three, it's going to be for a championship. So I think that's where they're going to go with it. And I think it's going to get a huge, huge reaction, not only to the people in the building when that happens, but to also people on social media as well. But as usual, I agree with you. I think that they're just breaking her down this much and burying her down so much for a purpose. And that's going to be, I think that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with you. We open the main card then with the Future of Stardom Championship with Hanan, the champion, defeating stablemate Momo Kogo with the Hanan special in 5 minutes and 20 seconds. Now, I watched this pay-per-view in full in one sitting yesterday, and since that pay-per-view, I've had Hanan's theme stuck in my head. But because I don't know any of the words, I just keep repeating the phrase, Hanan, Hanan, and I just keep doing that. And I'm honestly surprised that I haven't just, like, my brother hasn't hit me with something or my girlfriend hasn't left me, because I'm just repeating those 5 letters because I don't know any of the rest of the song. It's just so damn catchy. But speaking about Momo Kogo for a second, she comes out on this pay-per-view and looks a star in that new entrance gear, doesn't she? Her confidence is evident, and same with her in-ring presence. It's developed so much in a very short amount of time, Matt.
Yeah, I totally agree. Not about the entrance. I mean, hey man, that's on you. But now I think what I'm going to do now is because we talked about it, is that on the next match that she comes out with her music, I'm going to pay special close attention, and then I will probably be saying hashtag Rod Goodwin's right. I had this, I had Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train stuck in my head all day, and now I have Hannon's entrance theme. So thanks. But yeah, I totally agree with Momo Kogo. I mean, it's literally the first thing you see on the pay-per-view is her come out, new gear. She has like the umbrella, she has the robe, or not new gear, but like new entrance gear. And just every step she took coming down to the ring, it was like a step with purpose. Like, she just comes off as a star and just somebody that's so endearing. And just for that purpose, I knew this match would go sub less than 10 minutes. And I knew that they would pour everything. They would maximize every second that they got. And I thoroughly enjoyed this match. I thought from start to finish, this was really good. You have two of the up-and-coming talent here, not only in Stardom, but they're in the same faction. They're in Stars as well. So they're being coached up by Hazuki and Koguma and Mayu Iwatani as well. So I thought this was a solid match. How about you?
Completely agree. I'm glad you mentioned Hazuki, because obviously we've seen videos on social media of Hazuki training with Momo Kogo, and you can really see the influence, not just in a moveset. She's doing the Hazuki Straddle, she's doing the springboard dropkick, but you can see in the way she carries herself, it's very Hazuki. She's got influences of Mayu in there as well, so that's really, really good. She's a little bit green. Of course she is. She's still a rookie. There were moments where, she was a little bit slow into getting into position and things like that, but I don't think it was a detriment to the match at all. I think both women did a very good job of telling a story in 5 minutes, just over 5 minutes. Even from Hanan hitting the famouser, but then sitting too nonchalantly into the pin, and we get that brief flurry of Momo Kogo flash pins. I honestly really enjoyed this match. I gave it 3 stars. What about you?
I had it at 3 1/4, so I liked it just a little bit more than you. I talked about it last week. I'm a big fan of Hannah's judo throw that she does, and she did it kind of right off the rip. Again, they went less than 6 minutes, so you kind of got to get some of your stuff in and make it make sense. But I guess the one little negative I did have about the match is you talked about Momo Kogo not getting in position for something, and she hit the Frankensteiner into the pin, and then did like the basically the Hazuki style of Maestro Cradle back to back for 2 near falls, and then she got up and she was just waiting for Hanan to get up to throw the head kick, and that's something that I kind of don't like. It's like when you see the play coming, when you see the strike coming, or the person running at you, why don't you get out of the way? And that's something that she could have done. Like, she could have taken her time to sell. She could have maybe quarter turned a little bit, and maybe Hannon could have got up a little bit faster. There might have been a 50-50 on each of them. But for that being really the only negative I have about the match, I thought it was solid. And yeah, I was right there with you. I gave it 3.25.
And I think it is important to remember that Momokogo is still a rookie, so that's going to come. That's something that will be worked out relatively soon. But it was just something that reminded you that there is more to come, which is actually very, very exciting. We had a brief video package after this match. Now, I thought we were going to get the feel for the Cinderella Tournament, but of course that's not going to happen until after World Climax, which I forgot was first. But we did get a little bit of information about a couple of things to do with the company. So just a reminder for the Cinderella Tournament this year, it's again going to be split over 3 nights, with the opening night on the 3rd of April from the Takikawa Stage Garden in Tokyo. The mid-tournament stage, which I believe is going to be the second round, and the quarter-finals will be on the 17th of April at Korakuen Hall. And then, the same as last year, the final will be on the 29th of April from Ota Ward City Gymnasium, which is where they held the final of the 5-star last year, and also the Tokyo Dream Cinderella show that housed that Utami and Syuri match. So those are 3 dates to put in your diary in regard to the Cinderella. All we know in regards to the field is it's going to be the biggest field ever. We haven't actually got a bracket yet, which presumably we'll get after World Climax or during the World Climax shows. We also got announcements for the Golden Week Fight Tour for 2022. So this is basically a week where there are 4 national holidays all in the first week of May. So it's a big thing in Japan. And they announced a load of dates for starting to run, including their next big show. So the dates that they announced were May the 1st from Fukuyama Big Rose Center in Hiroshima. May 4th, they're running Kumamoto City Rojusho Show. Oh my God, Hall in Kumamoto. I'm so sorry, I butchered that to death. The next big show after after the Cinderella Tournament final on May 5th is the Fukuoka Goddess Festival, and that's going to take place at Fukuoka International Center. And then we've got a show on May 7th, the Edion Arena Osaka Second Gym, and then May 8th at Nagoya International Hall. All I'm going to say, Matt, is that over that week, good Christ, we are going to be busy.
Yeah, and we kind of talk about it before we record and during our. I think we text all the time. I think I talk to you via text more than my tag partner, which is a lot. But it's because we try to stay on the same page. Between we're a half a world apart. But I think going back to a lot of our text conversations that week might be obviously we're at the mercy of Stardom World. That week we might have to record like 2 or 3 podcasts a week just to kind of get through them, or just so we don't have like one giant 5-hour episode.
Just going back to that May 5th show, which obviously is going to be the big show for that month after the Cinderella Tournament final, like I mentioned, the video package had a lot of sort of footage of Hazuki, Maika, and Koguma, who of course are all were born in Fukuoka. So we talked about how Maika and Himeka had their title shot on the proviso that at some point the 3 of them became Fukuoka triple crazy. So maybe that show will be the one where they all team up for that 6th woman. We'll see. We'll move on. Match 2 was a tag team match with the Ueda team of Momo Watanabe and Ruaka defeating the Queen's Quest team of Utami Hayashishita and Lady C with the freezer drop in 7 minutes and 34 seconds. Now, much as I love Matt's opponent at World Climax, Lady C, I can't help feeling that this is just another unnecessary roadblock to the Utami and Momo singles match we all want. Now, we were supposed to get it at Nagoya Supreme Fight, and that was made a tag match with Azumi's return. It was a tag match here as well, and obviously you want to build Momo, I understand that, so Lady C is there, unfortunately, to just take the pin. But both women were effectively doing nothing here. Could you not have stacked the card even more and put that as a singles match on this card? Or are they waiting to main event at Korakuen? Or is, one of the nights of World Climax, as though the cards aren't stacked enough, are we going to have on one of the nights Utami versus Momo as well as a singles match? I mean, what do you think, Matt?
see your point of view, but this is kind of going to be a running theme that I'm going to talk about. Is this card was so loaded that literally the second match of the card, you have Utami on one side versus Momo on the other side. Second match, unbelievable. I see your point of view, but again, we talked about last week about they're going to try to get anywhere between 8,000 to 10,000 people on 2 nights coming up at the end of March. Well, just about a month from now. So you really, really need to stack that card. And Utami has that match on night 1 with Saya for the white belt. So I think on night 2 it's going to be Utami and Momo, with Momo going over, and then at the end of the show her challenging Shuri for the red belt coming up sometime in either April or May. So yeah, I see your point of view. It's just like, well, is this one-on-one match going to happen somewhere in the next 2 or 3 weeks? But I think you save it for World Climax. You're already loading up these shows. There's already going to be so much eyes on it with the return of Kari Hojo, obviously coming off what I thought was a pretty solid WWE run. More eyes on her than any other wrestler ever in the history of Stardom now, just because she has so many world eyes on her. So you want to have your best show. You want to have your best opponents, and this is something that you've been building since the end of December with Momo doing the turn. So I think you do this on night 2 of World Climax, just because it's going to get the most eyes, and the most eyes draws the most amount of money. So I think that this is where they're going with it.
I mean, I'm not complaining, don't get me wrong, because I suppose the more we build to that, the better that match is going to be. It's just that, it's Utami and Momo. It's not going to be a bad match. In other sort of moving away from that, what do you think of Lady C's new gear, Matt?
Loved it. I thought she looked different. She looked good. She's changed her gear twice since she's been in Queen's Quest, and it's both been an improvement. And I saw some people saying it looked like it was sort of like Konami's gear from a handful of years ago. I'm like, I can kind of see that. But even her hair looked different, and she does throw the best chops in Stardom. And I don't mean the Baba chop, not to be confused with what you think is the Great Khali chop, but that's another argument for another day. Yeah, just because she's so tall and the way she comes down with those chops, and kudos on all of her opponents for feeding well the chops, because that's half the battle. But I thought her new gear looked really good. She looked like a star. She looked different. She looked leaner. Not that she was by any means out of shape, but you can see there was a little more muscle tone, in her abdomen area and her shoulders as well. So when she was off, she was probably hitting the gym a little bit harder. And I think just with the new gear, and I think she maybe needs maybe 1 or 2 new moves. I think she's going to fit into this new versions of Queen's Quest pretty well.
Now, I loved chicken shit heel Momo in this match. The fact that she wouldn't start the match or wouldn't come into the ring until Queen's Quest were on the back foot was brilliant. And, it's a completely different Momo to the one we've seen before, and she's working with this character, and she seems to be sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Conforming to this heel and working with this heel character so much better every time she's in the ring. I think Utami and Lady C had decent chemistry in this. I think it's certainly the smoothest and most confident I've seen Lady C in a long time. I thought the double team that they had, which was, as you mentioned, the Miracle Violence connection. Holy Demon Army, sorry. The Holy Demon Army tag finish, which I quite liked. And then Ruaka obviously gets the pin over Lady C after Momo hits the Bastard Driver. What I liked post-match was Utami comes into the ring, isn't looking at Momo, and Momo just aims a brutal-looking kick to her head, which, because Utami isn't expecting it, sends her careening into the ropes. It looked really, really brutal. But yeah, it was a good match. It whet the appetite, as I mentioned, for that singles match, so it did its job. I gave it 3 stars, Matt. What about you?
I had that 3.25, but because you're doing the tag finish of one of my all-time favorite, probably my all-time favorite team of the Holy Demon Army, Kawada and Taue, I bumped it up a 1/4 star and gave it 3.5 stars. And I think I even texted you when this match was over. This was the best Momo has looked since the heel turn. And I think that some of that has to do with the fact that Momo's, she's always been good. But since 2018, when she started the journey for the white belt, she's been doing these breakneck, just crazy matches, for the better part of 3 years, constantly going out there, putting it all. She's constantly having match of the year contenders, and she's been kind of working a slower style. I think 1, to get in the heel character, and 2, there's a good possibility that her body just kind of beat up. So the fact that she really hasn't had any crazy, crazy matches, in the last 3 or 4 months, I think that her body's going to heal up a little bit better. And then I think you're going to see once they get into that singles match with Utami, that I think you're going to see a match of the year candidate. I think we're going to see a lot of them on that weekend of World Climax shows. But that Momo looked really, like, everything here looked really good. Everything was personal, made sense of purpose. And if we're walking Lady C, I understand it's like, well, they were kind of there just to be there, but everything they did was purposeful as well. So, yeah, I'm excited for when they do the singles match, and I just hope that they hold off until the end of next month.
Match 3 then was a tag team match. The team of Mayu Iwatani and Tam Nakano defeating the Uedatai team, or We Love Tokyo Sports team of Fukuoka Death and Saki Kashima with the moonsault in 10 minutes and 4 seconds. Now, this was initially supposed to be a singles match between Mayu and Saki with Death and Tam on the pre-show. Saki then asked to change it, presumably because in her mind, the more people in the match, then the odds of Death getting a roll-up victory go up significantly, but also because of the well-publicized bad blood between Mayu and Tam in the wake of the Stars split and Cosmic Angels formation, and she assumes their inability to coexist could lead to an easy victory for Uedatai. Now, this is very much going into the lion's den for Mayu because of the 3 other people in the match. Tam left her, Saki left her, and Fukuoka Death she lost in a match to Uedatai. So very much an awkward little matchup here for Mayu, but all of that animosity between Tam and Mayu seems to go out of the window instantly when they first fist bump prior to the match. And it's, it's the tag match that Tam has always been denied, or the tag team, that Tam has always been denied in the Goddess of Stardom Tag League. And you can see just how happy Tam is throughout this match to be teaming with Mayu. Can't you, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about Saki, one of many of the poor Mayu's betrayers. Kind of just to rewind the clock a little bit, as you know and our listeners know, I like to go back and watch them started from previous years. And just yesterday, I watched a match. It was Momo AZ, one of our all-time favorite tag teams, versus the team of Saki and Mayu. So I just thought this was a cool little tidbit that I wanted to share with you and the listeners. So Saki and Mayu, they come out, they cut the curtain. They're in mask and full robes. They get in the ring, the center of the ring, and they take their mask off, and Mayu is wearing Saki's gear, and Saki is wearing Mayu's gear. I was like, that's cool. And I'm like, I guess that. They kind of have the same body size. I'm sure they're both a size 0. So I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But then as the match was going, I was getting confused on who was who. I was like, why is Saki doing the moonsault? That doesn't make sense. But anywho, now getting back to the match. And it was a solid match, of course. But getting back to this match, yeah, you can just see, like, Tam just seemed to be having fun. I mean, we know behind the curtains that they have to be good friends. Just obviously they had, it was a year ago that the Tam and Cosmic Angels left Stars to form the group of Cosmic Angels. So it was pretty cool to see them back here, and I thought they had really good chemistry. I thought everything here looked really good. It was Mayu and Tam, they seemed to be on the same page, and you can see as they were leaving one of the last shots, you can see just Tam just smiling ear to ear. And I'm going to make a bold prediction here, putting no money on it, that the Goddess of Stardom Tag League, I think Mayu and Tam are going to be tag team in that tournament.
I mean, that is a bold claim. I mean, you can argue that with DDM expanding to, control almost half the damn roster at this point, you could argue that we could see, Stars and Cosmic Angels work together in the same way that Chaos and sort of unaffiliated wrestlers, or the main roster army, work together in New Japan. So we could see certainly more pair-ups with that. I personally don't think we will. I think we'll see... I think we'll probably see Tam and Waka, and then Mina and Unagi in the tag league. And just a spoiler, Mina and Unagi are my early favourites for the Goddess of Stardom Tag League. But irrelevant of that, the chemistry between Mayu and Tam is undeniable. That DDT into a wheelbarrow suplex looked brilliant. Saki took a lot of the heat here. I thought... There was one moment where Mayu hit an assisted 2-step dragon suplex and Saki kicked out. Since when do people kick out of the 2-step dragon? Irrelevant. Mayu finished it off quite literally with the next move with a moonsault, but why? I don't really understand. It was a 2-step dragon, and then Tam delivered a super kick to Saki, and obviously assist, but I don't quite understand that. But it's a very, very small thing.
Not really. I'm going to cut you off, but not really. I mean, Mayu's won that match to win many title matches, and I'm pretty sure she beat Bea Priestley to win the red belt with that. So I think one of two things either happened, and this is just kind of me just looking at behind the scenes, is either one, because they've been kind of high on Saki and pushing her, and I think she's going to get a white belt match probably coming up soon in one of these Road 2 shows. So maybe they just wanted to give her that little edge, or maybe Death was supposed to break it up and never did, and never got there in time. Maybe she missed her cue, or she was on the wrong side of the ring and couldn't get there in time. So that's my two kind of like behind the scenes, breaking it down, that the reason why. But yeah, that nobody should be kicking out of the 2-stage dragon suplex, not unless it's for a white belt match or a red belt match or her eventually match with Kari. But yeah, Saki kicking out of it at match 3. Yeah, I think maybe Death missed her cue. That's just my guess.
Yeah, potentially. That makes perfect sense. We did obviously tease a little bit of dissent between Mayu and Tam, where Tam accidentally kicks Mayu in the face, but it didn't lead to anything. I thought it was nice that post-match, the referee very deliberately put the hands of Mayu and Tam together. They both seem very happy. Maybe we do see the end of this feud between Cosmic Angels and Stars in the face of the bigger enemy of both Oedo Tai and DDM. Mayu posted a picture on Twitter, and she's got a big cut down her cheek, massive graze. So I'm not entirely sure where she got it. I think it was from a Saki kick, because it's very footprint shaped. Or maybe it's a giant paper cut from Death. Maybe the newspaper offense is far more dangerous than I gave it credit for. But I gave it 3.25 stars, Matt. What about you?
I was 3.25 stars, and yeah, I think it was either a Saki kick or knowing Mayu when she was leaving the building, getting to the bus or a car, she slipped and fell. That could have been it either.
Just living the gimmick.
God bless her.
And let's face it, if she was getting on the bus, she'd have been getting on the wrong bus. Match 4 then was a really, really ingenious match. It was the DDM Civil War, a 6-woman tag team match with the Murder Pirate and friends going to a time limit draw with the DDM OGs in 20 minutes. The tension in this match throughout the entirety of this 20 minutes was palpable, Matt.
Yeah, I think the one miss they had on this is before the match started, they should have said this match was sponsored by Stan Hansen, Kenta Kobashi, and Satoshi Kojima, for the amount of lariats, especially. You knew it was going to happen. You know you have. We talk about all the time, Mirai with those left-handed lariats, and Mike and Himika with their tag team lariats and single lariats. So it's like, as good as this match was building, I was like, where are the lariats coming? Where are the lariats coming? That last finishing stretch, man, I was waiting for them, and I got it all. Holy jeepers.
I have put in huge capital letters, give me what I want. I want a Mirai and Himika singles match. Just because between them, and I feel like I say this every podcast, but between them, the pace, the head of steam they build up heading into some of these clotheslines is frightening. For, especially because of the size disparity between Mirai Himika and other members of the roster. It was heavy hitting, and it was everything I wanted it to be. The only thing that surprised me, and this isn't a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination, we had a lot of Syuri and Julia in this match, which I didn't expect. I thought, with obviously that being a match on the first night of World Climax, I thought they'd protect those two competitors, but no, we got a lot of those two, and actually it worked brilliantly because that tension between the pair, obviously, they leave other sides of the stage, they don't shake hands post-match, they're at each other's heads, trying to headbutt each other, even after the bell goes and those two are still lamping each other. There is begrudging respect, but it's unbearably tense between the pair, and actually the fact that we saw so much of Julia and Syuri doesn't dampen that eventual singles match. If anything, it builds even more towards it. And I think even the most negative naysayer will say, yeah, we're definitely heading towards a DDM split. I think that's obvious when you look at the sheer amount of people in DDM. I mean, this was a 6-woman all DDM tag, and it didn't contain all the members. So yeah, overall, I thought this was great. The brutality and the pace really ramped up towards the last 5 or 6 minutes. If any match on this card screamed time limit draw, it was this one, and it worked perfectly with the story they're attempting to tell. And to be honest, those 20 minutes utterly fly by because there's so many little things to enjoy, whether it's the brutality of the strikes and the kicks between Syuri and Julia, or whether it's the clothesline offs between Himika and Maika, or whether it's the heat on Tekla, or whether it's Maika. The most impressive thing in this match for me was Maika attempting to suplex Mariah. She's done this spot many times where the person she's suplexing sort of guillotines, and then Maika sort of powers them up into the suplex anyway, and it's always impressive. But with someone of Mariah's height and Mariah's build, that is even more impressive, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back what you talked about, whereas they gave us Siri and Julia, like they gave you a preview. So I agree with you on one sense where they gave you quite a bit, but you know you were going to get more. You thought maybe sometimes when they do these matches and they're building towards a main event match and you know we're going to get it, they only give you a little bit of a taste. Where they gave us a whole bunch, but knowing these two, there's still a lot left, and I think we're going to see all of that coming up here in World Climax. And I thought the end was really good where they had a perfect camera shot where they hit the time limit draw and Sherry and Julia are in the middle of the ring together, exhausted. And the ref gives Sherry the belt and Julia's just staring at it. And then she pulls it over her head and Julia almost jumps at it, almost as if if I'm holding a string and my cat's trying to jump to get it and then I pull it away. And it's just oh, so close. You're so close. So I thought that was kind of a good little visual to give us the preview of what we're going to get at World Climax. So I can't wait. I can't wait to see that match. They said we got a lot here, but there's a lot more left. But yeah, this was really good. This was a good way to. The crowd was really into this. We talked about the lariats and just the brutality coming out of all 6 women here. I thought they all looked really good. There was a really cool Tower of Doom spot that they did. We're talking about the building up into the superplex. But yeah, I think we kind of both figured that either Tekla was going to eat the pinfall here, or that this was going to go to a time limit draw. And again, I don't have a problem with time limit draws as long as it makes sense. And I think this. For the sense of the overall story and where we're headed, this was absolutely perfect for a time limit draw.
You mentioned Tekla there. I think she needs some credit, especially for the selling. There was one point where Suri literally kicks the toxic spider out of Tekla, and she sells it like she's been hit by a Boeing 747, which is brilliant. But overall, the match is great, but the sort of unspoken things, that you infer as a watcher, there's no handshaking at the start between either team. And not just Julia and Suri, who've obviously got that match coming up for the red belt, but none of the members shake hands. None of the members are there at the end to share, the time limit draw bell, which is standard. No one is there at the end apart from Suri and Julia, and they leave on separate sides. So it's very much a case of when is this going to happen, not if this is going to happen. It's going to be who is going to fire the first shot, because there will be a straw that breaks the camel's back. And you do wonder what that straw will be, whether it will be a Himika or whether it will be Julia choosing a Tekla or a Mariah over some of the people who've been in DDM for longer. It's a very intriguing state of affairs. But as a match goes, I gave it 4 1/4. Thoroughly enjoyed it, Matt.
I was a solid 4 stars. So I was right there with you, my friend.
We move on then to the second of our 4 championship matches as we reach match 5, which of course is the Goddesses of Stardom title match, with Fukuoka Double Crazy, the champions, retaining against the Cosmic Angels team of Mina Shirakawa and Unagi Sayaka, with Koguma getting the pinfall with a top rope splash onto Mina Shirakawa in 12 minutes and 28 seconds. Matt, what do you think about this one?
I thoroughly enjoyed this, and to be honest with you, looking at this card on paper, this was the match, and I'm a tag guy, this was the match that I was looking forward to the least, just because, and not that I wasn't looking forward to it, just because how stacked this card was. Obviously you had the 2 main events, you had Utami and Momo on opposite sides, Mayu and Tam, DDM Civil War, the Future of Stardom belt, and this was my 3rd favorite match of the show. I thought that just goes to show you how stacked this card was. This was really good. Once it started, I was like, why wasn't I looking forward to this match? Cosmic Angels, we've noted before here on the podcast that it seems like they're more aggressive ever since Darth May Sakurai left to go to DDM. DMS, I think maybe we'll call it. But anywho, so very aggressive to start. Mina, she's been throwing some stiff, solid forearms, and she hit a roaring elbow towards the end of this match that was absolutely perfect. I mean, just perfect. And I was like, okay, this is where she's going with her striking. I'm all for it. With solid tag action on both parts. FWC, obviously, Koguma and Hazuki, they are on a completely different level than most of the tag teams in wrestling right now. And it really showed here. So this was really solid. And I know we talked before in previous podcasts what Cosmic Angels tag team we like better between Tam and Unagi and Tam and Mina. And obviously there is no shortage for my love for Tam Nakano, but I like the team of Unagi and Mina best. And I know you just talked about how they're your early favorites for the Goddess of Tag tournament coming up here in the next few months. So I'm hoping that Tam kind of goes off and does a singles thing, and they keep Unagi and Mina as a tag team. But I thought this was solid, and I gave this one 4.25 stars.
Yeah, it's great fun. It's great tag team fun. Mina and Unagi carried on with that intensity and that aggression, that renewed aggression that we spoke about in the last podcast, stemming from May leaving. But I thought Koguma and Hazuki were as tremendous as they ever are. Koguma seems to be determined in the big match to take any clothesline bump as high on her neck as is humanly possible. Thankfully, this one wasn't quite as bad as the one she took off Himika, but even so, still really quite brutal looking. Mina looked great. I thought Mina looked really, really good here. The draping implant DDT. Hazuki arrives and performs her absolutely terrifying suicide dives. It's the one thing that I think, since she's come back, she's been magnificent. But that suicide dive, I don't know whether she lacks a bit of confidence in it or whether she keeps hitting her foot on the top rope as she comes through. But it is terrifying every time she does it because she never looks like she's going to get enough distance on it. So yeah, if we can either avoid doing that in future, Hazuki, because we want you around for the majority of the rest of our time watching Stardom. So if you can avoid hurting yourself doing that, that'd be great. Brainbuster and Splash combo for the win for FWC. We did anticipate that FWC were going to retain, especially as there's quite a lot of buzz about them at the moment. PWI have had them number one on their weekly tag team charts for a couple of weeks now, so people are appreciating just how good they are. Post match, Momo Watanabe arrives to challenge for the belts at Sumo Hall. It hasn't actually officially been announced for Sumo Hall, presumably because we're still waiting on Momo's mystery partner, who she says, I've got the perfect partner to help relieve you of those belts. Whether that is going to be Starlight Kid or whether it's maybe a returning Natsuka Tora, we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, Tora's been more prevalent over recent weeks, after that injury, so maybe she's closer to an in-ring return than we thought. But obviously there's a lot of history between Momo and Hazuki. Obviously Momo leaving Hazuki high and dry at Dream Queendom in December. You've got all the history of Momo and Hazuki in Queen's Quest. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of anger, I imagine, especially on the part of Hazuki. Koguma says she only accepts challenges from those that can do the bear pose because, of course, asks if Momo can even bear pose, so Momo kicks her in the head, which was a really good ending to this segment. Overall, whether it is Starlight Kid or whether it is Natsuka Tora, I think that this could be a very solid tag match. Again, we don't know whether, at the moment of recording, we don't know whether that's going to be at World Climax or whether that's going to be maybe the main event of a Korakuen show. We don't know yet, but either way, I'm very much looking forward to that match, Matt.
Yes. Before we move on to the next one, we do have to talk about the one negative in the match. No flirty Hazuki again. Seems like ever since she won the tag belts, we don't get flirty Hazuki on Rossy Ogawa, which completely takes me out of it. Just kidding. Totally kidding. And now I think it's going to be Tora. I can see it obviously being Starlight Kid, but I think it's going to be returning Tora. But you can't rule out the fact of maybe a returning Kagetsu as well. I mean, that's been kind of teased here for a little bit as well. So that's something we have to keep our eye out for.
I mean, obviously this is all stemming back to that video of Hazuki and Momokogo on Twitter and there being that mystery sensei. I mean, can you imagine at World Climax? It's still a mystery partner. Hazuki is with Koguma and Momo brings out Kagetsu. just imagine the heat between Hazuki and Kagetsu. It would be phenomenal. Like, obviously, that is huge fantasy booking, but that would be insane. I would love to see that. I am going to be negative and say I don't think it will happen. I think it'll be Starlight Kid as they sort of bump her up the card because, spoiler, I think she is done with the high-speed division, but even so, just the very premise of that is a very exciting one. In terms of my rating, by the way, I gave the tag match 3 3/4. I thought it was a really solid outing. We move on then to the semi-main, and the reason I'm sure that a lot of you are listening to this podcast, the high-speed championship match with Azumi defeating the champion Starlight Kid with the numero uno in 17 minutes and 12 seconds. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter using the phrase generational rivals, which works perfectly for these. I'm a big fan of how they're building Starlight and Azumi as these forever rivals, as though they'll always be linked. I mean, Starlight even mentions that Azumi is her eternal foe, and obviously the Spanish fly from the top rope is called the Eternal Foe. These two put on an absolute banger in Osaka in 2020, which I've mentioned many times for the high-speed belt, and for me, until this match, that was the best high-speed match I've seen. And because of that, I've obviously been looking forward to a rematch between the pair since. But the growth in Azumi in the last 2 years is phenomenal. She feels like she wouldn't be out of place main eventing pay-per-views, but that's nothing to the improvement in confidence and charisma that Starlight has had over 2021 since her heel turn. And I'll be honest, Matt, we could be witnessing the early throes of a matchup that headlines a sumo hall or a dome. Bushiroad came out and said that 2025 predictions want to have them headlining a dome. I would not be surprised if Starlight versus Azumi is the match that they base that around, because, from the chemistry we got in this match, holy Jesus, what a match.
You talked about them having eternal foes, and they really have 2 matches, which is kind of unheard of. Azumi Starlight Kid and Utami and Sari. These are all matches that they can go to with little to no build because the build's already there, and you're going to draw 700, 800, 900, 1,000, people just based on, it's going to be excellent. It's almost like having Okada, Tanahashi, and then Prime, Chono versus Muda, literally in your, on your card where you can pull that ace out anytime you want. But this goes, and I say this all the time, and I'm going to continue to say this, and I apologize if I'm boring our listeners when I say it. This just comes back to what I talk about all the time is reps, and reps in there with the right people. If there, any of our listeners are thinking about being a wrestler or that are wrestlers, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got is you're only going to get better by being in the ring and learning from people that are better than you. And Azumi, right from the get-go, she turned pro, 14, 15? Something like that?
Oh, you've caught me on my heels there. I'm not entirely sure. Carry on talking and I'll find out.
But anywho, so she turned pro at a very, very young age. And right from the get-go, she's, kind of right into Queen's Quest with Momo and Io Shirai, who obviously, we have very high regard for Io Shirai. And Starlight Kid, right from when she turned pro at a very, very young age, she's learning from Mayu, Mayu Tuane, Mayu, I can't talk, Mayu. But my point is they're in the ring, they're across the ring, and in the locker room learning from the best of the best. And literally, this is what you're going to see. The first match with Momo, Kogo, and Hana. You're going to see that with them too, coming up in a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, because they are in the ring getting reps with people that are better than them. And they're going to constantly learn because they're, they have a passion for this. So, and you text me, just to kind of put this in some sort of context, you text me yesterday when we were talking about this match that Starlight Kid is 20 and Azumi is 19. That is, their combined age is my age. Azumi was born the year I started wrestling. So, and I'm not sitting there saying, oh, I'm old. By no means I'm not. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I have the mind of an 8-year-old. But this is just, these two are so good at such a young age because, again, they're getting reps in with some of the best of the best. And that's where you're going to see a lot of these younger talent. We have that new rookie. Her first match was against Utami, who was the female wrestler of the year last year. So it's like, how are you not going to get better? Obviously you got to keep working at it, but when you have people that are willing to pass down the knowledge to make wrestling better, I always talk about, Terry Funk being such a great teacher and things that he's always said. And Terry Funk would always say that I need to teach the younger generation, what I know. So the business keeps expanding. And, sometimes you get some of those older generation wrestlers like, no, I'm not going to teach them that because I don't want them to take my spot, which is the complete negative way of looking at it. You need the business to continue to grow. So there's anything that any of these veterans who've had some success in wrestling, not just in Stardom, just in general, can teach these younger kids so the business can grow. I mean, that's really, that's just the beauty in the art of wrestling.
Couldn't agree with you more. For me, these two are two of the best in ring in the company. Like, I don't think it's, I can't split them on who is better. They just work so damn well together. And then adding this generational divide storyline as well just adds an extra layer to every exchange. I mean, we expected it to be quick. I mean, good God, we've seen these two work so often that we knew it was going to be quick. But, like, the speed never ceases to amaze me. The quick points are quicker, but then the forearm exchanges have a new level of brutality, like I mentioned, because of this generational rival storyline. The pace that they hit on the outside, and then Azumi targeting the arm, hitting the Mystica, and sort of trying vainly to hit the numero uno. You've got the flash pin sequences that are absolutely magnificent. Azumi kicking out of the Black Tiger pile driver, and then we have that move that beat Azumi in Nagoya Supreme fight, the Eternal Foe, the Spanish Fly off the top rope. She blocks it the first time, then Starlight Kid hits it, and Azumi transitions that impact as she hits the mat seamlessly into an armbar on Kid's bad arm. It is one of the most beautiful sequences and most seamless sequences I have seen. And from there, Azumi then hits the Destroyer, and then when Kid goes for the Kid Clutch, which is her fireman carry pin, Azumi manages to maneuver Kid into a numero uno from that Kid Clutch, which is just, again, she is 19. Admittedly, she's got 7 years in-ring experience. She debuted when she was 12. But even so, absolutely phenomenal. And we always say, like, with a high-speed match, there's always that stigma that it needs to be short. Everything needs to happen in that, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-minute period. For this, for 17 minutes, it was a relentless, blistering pace, with both women leaving everything in the ring. I mean, the desperation of Starlight Kid not to lose as she's locked in that numero uno, that desperation in the face of Azumi as she watches once again Starlight Kid getting to the ropes when she's locked in the numero uno. I mean, I haven't seen every high-speed match ever, but I'm damn sure this is the best. I mean, to keep my attention for 17 minutes doing this type of match without losing the audience, without losing the urgency and the story you're trying to tell is sensational. It's my match of the year so far, Matt.
Mayu Iwatani. I said it. Okay, anyway, I just need to drink. Sorry. Yeah, this was 5 stars. Easy for me. I mean, you pretty much covered everything that happened in the match. But I kind of just want to just touch upon the Spanish Fly. She hits it. It pinned Azumi a few weeks ago. But when she hits it, Azumi holds on to that bad arm, holds on to the wrist. And when they popped up from the bump, she uses that momentum to carry where she can weave through into the armbar. I thought that was absolutely just brilliant. I popped huge for that. Again, they get towards the end of the match where they're doing the high speed, 2.99 falls. And even Azumi does the double Azumi Sushi that she's pinned Takumi Roha in the 5-star last year with, where she kicks out of the one and then just rolls into another. And I thought that was going to be the finish. I don't think I've ever seen anybody kick out of the, two of those right in a row. But then they went right back to the psychology for the finish with the armbar. But yeah, I had this probably my match of the year, either this or the Danielson Hangman Page match from AEW a few weeks ago. But this was, easy 5-star. This is the best starter match of the year. And this is worthy of all the praise. Worthy of all the praise that it's getting online as well. And yeah, these two at such a young age, at 19 and 20, as long as they can stay healthy, these two are going to be. They already are. I mean, we talk about, they always have, you can always go to a Shiri for a main event, or a Julie or a Utami or a Momo. These two are not main eventers. You can put these on a main event in any show. It's going to draw. It's going to make sense. But I think what this does is, I think you mentioned it before, I think Starlight Kid's going to be done with the high-speed division. And I think you're going to see her a push towards the white belt as we get into the spring here.
Just a little bit of statistics, because I know how much you love stats. Starlight Kid's reign ends at 178 days, failing in her 6th title defense. Azumi joins an exclusive club of only Natsuki Teo and Kaori Yoneyama to hold the high-speed belt more than once, with Yoneyama and Teo holding the belt 3 times each. As we've already mentioned, this match got huge amounts of praise from wrestlers. Ospreay, Omega were talking about how good the high-speed style of match is. Dave Meltzer gave it 4.5 stars, which obviously we know that it's one person's opinion, and obviously we'll be talking about that in the main event as well. But the fact that it's given that exposure is tremendous. However, I did just want to ask something. We got a question on Twitter, Matt, and it was from @MoreFilms, Phil Gerard. Hi, Phil. He says, as good as it was, is Azumi not just spinning her wheels in this division, having held the title last year? Does Starlight have to start her mask collection from zero? Yeah, obviously, Starlight gives Azumi the mask and says, put it on me, but Azumi refuses, throws the mask away, and they fist bump. That show of respect. But I'm interested, Matt. What do you think about Azumi holding this belt? Where do you think she goes from here?
I mean, now you can put this belt. I mean, they just elevated this belt, which I go nausea when I talk about it all the time. When you're in a match, you want to elevate the two people in the ring, and if it's for a belt, you want to elevate the belt. You can now main event, and we saw they main evented Starlight Kid and Natsupoi not too long ago. But now you can main event a Korakuen Hall show or somewhere even bigger with this belt. So technically, you have 3 belts, and I guess even the tag belts, you can kind of main event these shows where you're trying to draw 500, 600, 700 people with the belt, because the elevation that they've done here. So I think she'll hold this belt for a little bit until they move her up into the white belt, red belt, and who knows how long that goes. Maybe they give Azumi a year reign with this, just to build the belt up even more. I mean, I don't know where they go with this. But as far as the mask collection goes, I don't know. I mean, where else can she put them? I mean, she's got so many on her robe. I mean, she's going to have like she looks like Archangel from the X-Men if she gets any more masks with the robe. It's just like, I don't know. That's a good question, but I'm not sure. But I think maybe that's what they do. I think that Azumi's going to hold this belt for a little bit, because it's just the top of Stardom is so stacked with the white belt and red belt challengers that I think you keep the high speed belt on Azumi for a handful of months and maybe even a year change, just to keep elevating the belt until you're ready to. Again, she's only 19 years old, so it's like you can wait a year, 2 years until you put her challenging for the red belt, and it's only going to make her 20, 21, 22. So I think you just keep the belt on her, and you just keep elevating the high speed title, which is just makes it all that much more better for Stardom, that you have so many titles you can go to main event your shows and draw you money.
Absolutely. I do agree with you. The only problem is, obviously, to have a year-long reign, you need the people to fill out that division. And whilst that's not necessarily a problem with the likes of the white belt or the red belt, there is a very specific skill set required to wrestle a high-speed match. And, you've got, obviously, Starlight Kid, who we both think is now done with the high-speed division. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if Starlight Kid wins the Cinderella and goes after Saya's white belt. But are there enough people to fill this high-speed division? You've got Natsupoi, you've got Azumi, you've got Koguma. But then, do we see a Saki in that division? Do we see a Tekla in that division? Maybe Momokogo in that division? Obviously, we've got Kaori Yoneyama, in the Fukuoka Death guys. But, with Azumi, yes, I can see what Phil's saying. She's already held that belt. Do we not want to see her being pushed forward? I feel like we need the superstar in that division before we can move both Azumi and Starlight Kid out of that division. And at the moment, as good as Koguma is, as good as Natsupoi is, Are they as good as Azumi and Starlight Kid? Ooh.
Not many people are, though. That's kind of an unfair question.
Yeah, that's true.
Know?
That's true. But we need to build the division before we move two of the linchpins of it out of that division. So obviously at the moment we are focusing more on Starlight Kid, which is fine. I don't have an issue with that in the slightest. Like you mentioned, Matt, Azumi's time will come. Putting gold on her, irrelevant of what the gold is never going to be a bad thing. And again, just because she's high-speed champion doesn't mean that she can't challenge for the tag belts, for the white belt, even for the red belt. I mean, it does sort of telegraph that she's not going to win, but it's experience, isn't it? So
yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if Azumi holds it for a long time. We build up Natsupoi, we build up Koguma. We might even have other people challenge from other promotions. Who knows? Obviously, with the relationships being built from the New Blood show, we might have other challenges as well. So obviously, it's going to be very interesting. I can see what Phil's saying, but overall, I don't think this is a bad thing for Azumi.
No, not at all. One last thing I want to point out is, and I always talk about in wrestling, you can win by losing. Obviously, Starlight Kid lost this match, but this builds her up in a whole nother realm. I mean, she's had this talked about match that talked about all over the world. She looked absolutely fantastic in defeat here, which makes sense because does she or does she not have a ginormous match coming up here in 1 month?
She does. Absolutely.
So now you just put the whole wrestling world is talking about this match. So everybody's going to be, more people are going to be checking out this match, especially as it becomes readily available. And I think maybe this is something that Stardom needs to put up maybe on their YouTube channel in the next week or two. And then it's like, oh, by the way, she's wrestling, Kari Sane, Kari Hojo coming up at a huge show. So this was literally the timing of Stardom couldn't be more perfect that she just had this banger match that everybody's talking about. And a month later, she's going to have pretty much the biggest match of her career.
Again, 19 and 20 respectively. It should be illegal to be that good at that age. We main evented then match 7 with the Wonder of Stardom Championship match with the champion Saya Kamitani defeating Natsupoi with the Phoenix Splash in 21 minutes. Now, there's a lot of context to this match, which I must admit I wasn't aware of in terms of Saya, so I just want to shout out at Velkage_Bracker, Scotty Wrestling, and at OneUpCulture on Twitter, who actually gave us quite a little bit of context in terms of Saya, but obviously with Natsupoi around, who they went a very interesting way with this match. Natsupoi obviously wants this belt because it was held by her idol and friend, Kairi Hojo, even going so far as to wear Kairi's gifted gear in the last match for the title she had against Tam in July of last year. And then again at Korakuen, Poi asked Kairi to be there to watch, which Kairi agreed to, making this match even more important. And that was around what we built this match. We built it around the importance of this belt to Natsupoi. However, Saya Kamitani has apparently, which I didn't realize, a lot of history with this venue. Apparently, this has special significance, as this is where she failed her idol tryout and she was never the center. Therefore, the venue sort of killed her dreams, so to speak. And ultimately to be able to conquer that and finish the main event with her standing tall in a venue that never allowed her to be the star is a huge deal for Saya. So it added even more gravitas to that victory. So thank you to those three for a conversation I managed to see on Twitter. So thank you for that. But overall, this was another really good match. But I thought it was brave to paint Saya Kamitani one of the most earnest baby faces on the roster, one of the most natural baby faces on the roster. She was unmistakably the heel in this match.
I think that was kind of done I see your point. I think it was kind of done on purpose just to show she has this little more aggression side, because they're kind of teasing that she's going to be having a match with Kari somewhere down the road, whether it's for the white belt or not, and then probably do some stuff with Starlight Kid. I think they need to show more of an aggressive side of her. I think that's why. Plus, who's going to boo Natsupoi? She looks like a porcelain doll.
That is true. That is very true. I thought it was quite interesting to see how Saya Kamitani's obsession with Kota Ibushi is taking her to steal the Osprey spot where she lands on her feet and looks over her shoulder. I was like, really? Are we stealing that now? Okay, fair enough. And there was another Osprey spot she stole with the double stomp on to Natsupoi as Natsupoi goes for the low drop kick, which looked magnificent, and I've always been a big fan of that spot, which I'm pretty sure Ibushi did against Evil way back in, I think, 2018. I remember him doing that in the corner. So, yeah, a real obsession with Kota Ibushi is Saya, but, that aside, this was another really good match, another hard-hitting match as well, Matt.
Yeah, and just to go back, when you're talking about stealing moves, I have no problem with people taking moves as long as they're not on the same show and it's something significant. That's something that actually gets me, that sometimes I'll be like, hey, man, are you getting in the ring and locking up? Because that's what I do, man. So I have no problem with people doing other people's moves because you're doing it in a different context. You're doing it with your own little spin. But anywho, off that soapbox, yeah, this is really good. I mean, you're talking, you have 2 back-to-back matches that were this good. And the crowd was a little tired as this match started, as they were just completely blown away by the match we just talked about. But as this match got going, they got the crowd right back into it. These two absolutely have really good chemistry together. I liked how they kind of almost started with like a high-speed style. They kind of went back and forth. I thought there was a cool spot where they were kind of going off different sides of the ropes, and they finally wind up catching each other on the same side of the ropes. And Saya grabbed Natsupoi's hand, and they both almost kind of like arm dragged each other to try to slow each other down. I thought that was a really cool, innovative spot. That double foot stomp that Natsupoi did, where she was balancing herself pretty much off the eye hook coming off the turnbuckle, which I thought that was super impressive. Then there were some really big spots. I mean, Saya ate a lot of German suplexes. She hit the one on the apron. She ate a spider German. She hit another one going towards the finish that just looked absolutely brutal. I mean, Natsupoi, for being all of like 5'1" and 110 pounds, she throws some brutal German suplexes. And there was some great near falls, like flash finishes. I mean, Natsupoi even hit a picture perfect fairy blink that if I didn't know the finish going into the match, I thought that would have been the finish. Ultimately, though, Saya's power and aggression leans to be a little bit too much. Star crushing, the Phoenix Splash, perfect way to end this pay-per-view. I gave this one 4.5 stars.
Yeah, you mentioned Natsupoi's German suplexes. There was one very, very scary moment where Saya seemed determined to channel her inner Mayu and attempted to break her own neck with the bump she took off the second rope German suplex. But it looked, Poi looked very, very good in this match, throughout this match. And, the defeat, yes, I don't think many people expected Natsupoi to come out of this match with the white belt, but irrelevant of that, I thought she looked fantastic in this match. Not just, in the high-speed style that she's famed, but also in the forearms that she was throwing, the kicks she was throwing to Saya's face, the renewed aggression where she just refused to stay down. And it is testament to how well they built Natsupoi in the pre-game of this match, that Saya is perhaps one of the most earnest baby faces, yet I am wholeheartedly behind Natsupoi in this match, and that's testament to both women. There was an outstanding deadlift wheelbarrow suplex out of a pinning attempt from Saya. She did a victory roll, Natsupoi kicked out, and she used that to wheel the momentum to deadlift wheelbarrow Natsupoi, and it looked amazing. And then you mentioned that fairy blink, one of the closest 2 counts of the year so far by a mile. Absolutely fantastic. I thought both women did a tremendous job of this, main eventing that pay-per-view. The first time, I believe, that Saya has main evented a pay-per-view. Is it? It is. I'm sure it is. I'm sure someone will correct me, but even so, it's still a fantastic achievement. And to follow a match like Azumi and Starlight and still have people talking about it. Meltzer gave this 4.5 stars as well. And again, for anyone up in arm, it's one-man opinion and completely subjective. But I thought both women did tremendously well here. And considering Saya almost fell off the top rope early on, attempting a springboard, and no one is talking about that because of the rest of the match is testament to both women. We talked about, obviously, a little bit of history of Saya in the venue, and she gets really, really upset at the end of the show. Her and Natsupoi have got nothing but respect for each other, which is nice to see. And then Saya says the next 2 people she wants to fight for the white belt are Utami Hayashishita and Tam Nakano, with Saya and Utami taking place on night 1 of World Climax, and the winner of that taking on Tam on night 2. As though these cards couldn't get any more stacked, Matt. So let me just remind everyone, before I ask Matt's opinion, of what these cards look like with the confirmed matches at the moment. So night one, which is the top, it's being called World Climax the top, so March 26th. We've got the Future of Stardom Championship match between Hanan and Rina. The special tag match with Kairi Mayu versus Tam and Unagi. We've got the Wonder of Stardom Championship between Saya and Utami. And then the main event of Syuri versus Julia. That's an outstanding card for night one. And then we follow that with night two, where the winner of the future belt on night one will take on Mai Sakurai. We've got the special singles match between Kairi and Starlight Kid. We've got the Wonder of Stardom Championship, where the winner of Utami and Saya will take on Tam. And then we've got the World of Stardom Championship match, where the winner of Syuri and Julia take on Mayu Iwatani. I mean, Jesus Christ, these cards are absolutely stacked, Matt. The crowd are going to be exhausted.
But, yeah, and plus we think that you're going to get a Julia versus Suzuki, probably some sort of hardcore match on night two, and we're probably going to get Momo and Utami as well on night two as well. So you're constantly stacking the deck, and plus we don't know what they're going to do with the tag belts. What they're going to build up. I would not be surprised or upset if we get a rematch between Mike and Himika versus FWC, especially how their first match, or the first title match that they had about a month or so ago, ended kind of in controversy with that quick roll-up. So I would not be surprised or upset if we get that rematch as well, if they run that back. But these are, I can't stress this enough, how loaded these cards are. I mean, it's just, it's insane. This is WrestleMania Tokyo Dome level stuff from Stardom, right from in the first quarter of the year. And I think it's only going to get bigger and better.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned, obviously, that Julia Suzuki match. It wouldn't surprise me if they don't do that on these cards, but instead have a big multi-woman tag. Like I said, 5-on-5 hardcore elimination tag match. Just go balls to the wall with it on night two. Just absolute chaos. And I think, obviously, I did mention before a little bit of fantasy booking about how maybe Julia selects a team and she selects, Tekla and Mirai, and maybe leaves out a Himika or leaves out a Micah. And that's where, we get even more tension. Obviously, a lot of that depends on how that main event match goes on night one with Syuri and Julia. I honestly see Syuri taking the belt on both nights, but Jesus, the possibilities, I tell you what. Just another couple of questions, just to finish this podcast off. Lone Saber on Twitter says, "Hello guys, I've got a question for Matt. How can you be so positive about everything? It's contagious. It really is. I mean, Matt, how are you? Is it cocaine? Is that what makes you this positive?"
To be honest, I've never done an illegal drug in my life, to be honest with you. I'm like one of the only people. I enjoy a nice beer every now and again. But, me and my sister are very close, and my sister, not to bring the podcast down, but hopefully what I'm about to say helps anybody. My sister deals with mental health on a daily basis, and I basically break my day down almost into hours. Like I wake up, the fact that you wake up and, you have another day, and I wake up in a warm bed, that's a positive. Obviously, I go on, and, if you follow me on social media, you know how much I love being a husband and a father. So those are two huge things. The fact that I have multiple amounts of wrestling DVDs and comic books, that helps as well. The world can be a very negative, dark, and cold place if you let it. And I know, trust me, I've had life kick me in the face several times, but it's all about, how you react to it. You just have to just focus on the positive. And if you are a wrestling fan, as I'm assuming that you are, if you listen to this podcast, there's a lot of good wrestling that's out there. And I always tell people that, well, I don't like New Japan now, or I don't like WWE now, and I don't like Ring of Honor now, or whatever, and that's fine. But you can go back into the 90s or the 80s, and you can watch stuff, it's really available, on YouTube, or watch All Japan from the 90s. There's some good stuff out there. People just need to just focus on the positive. And for me, it's very easy because I have a lot of positive things in my life. So to answer that question, that's why it's very easy for me to be positive. Yes, there are certain times where I do get down on myself on certain things, but I try not to let it bother me. Like, my thing is, if it's not going to matter in a year, not going to bother you in a year, it's not worth more than 1 minute to worry about. If it's not going to matter in 5 years, it's not worth more than 5 minutes to worry about. Just, focus on the positive. And, we get to talk about Stardom once or twice a week, and to me, that's a huge, huge positive in my life. So, if anybody's going through anything negative, hopefully what I just said, hopefully that helps you. And by all means, you can also reach out to me on social media if you're having any issues with anything, or if I can help anybody out with anything, or give some encouraging words, or tell a bad dad joke from time to time. But I appreciate the kind words, and if I can ever help anybody out that's having a bad day, a bad week, or a bad year, just let me know.
Here. Andy Knudsen. This is an interesting question on Twitter. How can Cosmic Angels win Best Faction Award when their win-loss record is so abysmal? It's a good question because their win-loss record isn't the best. However, I will just say that it's not necessarily all about wins and losses. It's, it's merch shifted. But even so, it's things like the storylines that are being told. The feud between Julia and Tam, the story of Waka, you've got Mei Sakurai turning on DDM. There's a lot of focus, turning on Cosmic Angels. There's a lot of focus on Cosmic Angels, and, it could be, it's very subjective, to be perfectly honest, the whole Best Faction Award anyway, but, the friendship shown between Unagi, Mina, and Tam especially is, quite infectious, so it wouldn't surprise me if that's the reason. Have you got an opinion on that, Matt?
Yeah, first of all, don't put the heat on me, brother. I didn't vote them best faction. But I guess, two things is just the improvement we've seen over the last year of Unagi and Mina. And I'm a big fan on improvement because that just shows you that you're working your ass off to get to where you need to go. And I guess the number one reason that I would say they were voted as number one faction is they have the wonderful Miss Tam Nakano.
The Tam Stan himself. Final question then, and obviously we haven't had any updates in regard to this mystery woman or indeed the mystery sensei. So Joseph Usher wonders on Patreon, could the other mystery woman be Natsu Sumire? I'd love it to be Natsu. I really do actually miss Natsu. I'd love it to be her. Whether it is, I don't know. I know that obviously just throwing a name out there, but I'd be excited to see a Natsu return. Matt, what about you?
I've only seen, I've talked about going through some of the previous stuff. I've only seen a handful of her stuff. So if there's some stuff that I need to see, by all means, guys, hit me up on social media and let me know what I need to see. But I'm actually glad you brought that up. But as far as who the mystery person is, we only saw a picture of the red shoes. So it could be very easily just Red Shoes Uno, the referee from New Japan. Or I think it's going to be Jushin Liger, and I think Liger is going to teach her Momo Kogo the palm strike. And I think that you're going to see Momo Kogo using the palm strike as a finish or a setup as a finish in the near future. And I think that's just, if it is Liger and they're showing these vignettes on YouTube and Stardom World of her showing how to use the palm strike, that's just going to add another dynamic to a person that's very new to the roster that's so good so fast.
Final thing then. We'll just go through a couple of the announced cards for the next couple of shows. Interestingly enough, we mentioned how Julia had been on top of 50% of the cards, where Syuri had only been on the top 25%. And since you said that, coincidentally, Julia is not on top of any of the announced 4 cards. So there you go. As we record today, 26th of February, Stardom have just run a show in Himeji. This is the card for that show. So singles match, Mina versus Rina. Hanan and Koguma versus Natsupoi and Mirai. 6-woman tag, Syuri, Maika, and Himika taking on Tam, Nakano, Unagi Sayaka, and Waka Tsukiyama. Juliet, Tekla, and Mei Sakurai taking on Mayu, Hazuki, and Momo Kogo. And then finally, we have got on top Utami, Azumi, Saya Kamitani, and Lady C versus the Ueda Tai team of Saki Kashima, Ruaka, Starlight Kid, and Momo Watanabe. 3 more cards. We've got the 27th in May, Tam and Waka versus Saki and Ruaka. Another tag match, Mina and Unagi versus Mirai and Tekla. Mayu and Momokogo versus Julia and Mei Sakurai. Then 6-woman tag, we've got Hanan, Koguma, and Hazuki versus Rina, Kid, and Momo. That should be quite interesting. I like that. And then on top, we've got an 8-woman tag, Syuri Maika, Himika, and Natsupoi versus Utami, Azumi, Saya Kamitani, and Lady C. That's going to be a very tasty match. Quite like the sounds of that one. Last two then. Go on, Matt.
No, I was going to say I agree with you. Yeah, those all seem like pretty solid. You know, as much as it's kind of a house show, road to show. They all seem like they have solid things coming out of it.
The 5th of March from Osaka, we've got Hanan versus Saki, Natsupoi versus Momokogo. That'll be an interesting match. I'm intrigued to see how Momokogo fights in a high-speed style, Matt.
That might be, we talked about Azumi doesn't have challengers for the high speed. That might be a little trial for Momokogo.
Maybe. 8-woman tag, Julia Himika, Tekla, and Mei Sakurai versus the Cosmic Angels team of Tam, Mina, Unagi, and Waka Tsukiyama. We've then got Syuri Maika and Mirai versus Mayu, Koguma, and Hazuki. That's going to be very, very good. Yeah, that's the match on the 3 cards so far that's really stood out to me. And then main event, Utami, Azumi, Saya Kamitani, and Lady C versus Rina Ruaka, Starlight Kid, and Momo Watanabe. And then the final card announced, the 6th of March in Yumazu, is Wacky versus Wacky. God damn it. That's because
it's another trainee. Wacky Taki.
Wacky Taki. That's because I've just had Waka and Saki. Waka versus Saki. We've then got a 3-way, Azumi versus Hanan versus Fukigen Death. 6-woman tag, Utami, Saya Kamitani, and Lady C versus Tam, Mina, and Unagi. And then 2 8-woman tags to close out the show. Julia Mirai, Tekla, and Mei Sakurai versus Rina Ruaka, Kid, and Momo. And then the main event, Syuri Maika, Himika, and Natsupoi versus Mayu, Koguma, Hazuki, and Momo Kogo. That's another very, very nice, tasty version of that match. So, Matt, I think that ends our review of Cinderella Journey in Nagaoka 2022. It was a great show, and like I said, one that surpassed all expectations, especially a show with no red belt defense on there. Really, really, really impressed with that. I just want to go and talk a little bit about our Patreon. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed and is supporting us over at patreon.com/the Stardomcast. Thank you to all our great patrons. We really, really do appreciate every single one of you. I just want to quickly talk about the upcoming Stardomcast extra episodes, should I say. So we've got coming up over the month of March, we have got Nene Takahashi versus Meiko Satomura match review. We have got the Momo Watanabe white belt retrospective coming at the end of the month, 30th of March. And then on Wednesday, the 2nd of March, this coming Wednesday, we have got the Uedatai versus Queen's Quest loser leaves unit match from the 7th anniversary show, and that was of course given to us by one of our patrons. If you want to suggest a match for us to review, then please go ahead and use the link at the top of our patron page. Other than that, Matt, anything else you want to add before we go off air?
No, I just want to let everybody know, if you follow me on social media, I got a jam-packed week coming up. Friday, I return to Hazleton, Pennsylvania for the Sanctuary. Tickets are only just $5. Saturday, you might like this, Rob. Saturday, I'm actually training with UFC light heavyweight champion Glover Teixeira. So let's make a violent, So let's make a violent man even more violent. And then Sunday, I travel to New Jersey, where I have a shot at the Ace Fusion Pro Wrestling United States Championship. So maybe I'll bring some gold back home for the Stardomcast listeners. So. As always, I appreciate the support, and I may as well just give my plugs here because I'm kind of I'll segue into it. Just look me up for Matt Turner up on Twitter and Instagram as well. And if you were bored, since I didn't get the plug in, go and buy the book "Living the Dream: Stardom's 10th Anniversary in Review." That's how stacked this show was. We reviewed. I didn't get a chance to get the cheap plug in.
Just to piggyback on what I said before, thank you to Rob Jones, who was the one that recommended the Uedatai versus Queen's Quest loser leaves unit match. So make sure you're listening, Rob, on Wednesday because it's your match we are reviewing. Thank you to Devontae Ward Walker as well, who's our newest patron on our $3 white belt tier. You can talk to me on Twitter at RealRobGoodwin. You can subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Find us on at The StardomCast on Twitter and on Facebook. You can also check out the YouTube channel for our videos as well. Patrons, keep your eyes out for details regarding our very first hangout. So yeah, keep your eyes on the Patreon there. If you fancy joining our Patreon, you can do it for as little as $1 a month. At, as I said before, patreon.com/The StardomCast. Thank you so much for listening, guys. We really do appreciate it. And we'll talk to you guys again soon.